this is a little bit different from the other topics. It's more on the resilience portion. Actually, one of the few experience we had with resilience, and I guess everybody knew, was the CrowdStrike. Okay, so for us as a bank, we were affected also. But it took us only around 2.5 hours. We already have all of our services up. So it's not about when you will, nobody ever expected CrowdStrike to be the cause of failure for your entire system. Okay, so financial sectors actually have a very big challenge because number one, everything is connected now. Everybody has to do payments. Everybody has to do finances. So that actually increased the surface for attacks, for failures. And then, of course, most people would say, well, they're trying to get something. It can be the bank's money or data. But most people or most attackers view you as a way to go into other systems because you are so highly integrated to everybody. Same also for all of your other integrations. So there's these three incidents here. It's pretty old in a way, some of them pretty old. But if you notice, these three incidents is different from current what you experience. Most people are looking at somebody's trying to gain money. But this three incident is about paralyzing a country. Okay. So how do you paralyze a country? You target the financial sector. So the worst one was in South Korea. It was a malware that does nothing but wipe out data. Okay? So there is a real big shift already from about cybersecurity. It's not about being attacked. It's how do you withstand it? How do you recover from it? Okay? So it's just a function of time. And then if you look at it, there's a lot of threats in your side. One, somebody may target you. The other one is they'll be targeting either the third party or your clients. And because of being a financial organization, you have to be able to cover them also. So that's why it's a bit difficult for financial entities. So let's look at the future. There's actually a movement to remove cash. Okay, so in 2021, as you can see, 23 million, virtually no cash in UK. And in 2022, Americans, there's so 2/5 of their population never using cash. Even checks are in decline. Okay? So roughly, there's a 50% decline from 2012 to 2022 on check usage. So everything is starting to move to the digital realm. So that's why they become very attractive targets for any, let's say, geopolitical problems. Okay? So how do you get yourself to be operationally ready? Okay. Everything is about risk. What are you willing to invest on, protect on, and what are you willing to? It's a big investment, actually, to protect everything. So the only thing you need to protect are the vital services that you have. And then, of course, still the same, people. Most people would put the budget where they spend millions on their security tools, but how much do they train their people? It has to be around equal. Now, the third parties, people don't actually highlight it. It's also about process. You have to spend also to enhance your process. Okay? And then incorporate the threat model. Somebody that is, if this is being done somewhere else, sooner or later, it will arrive to you. And then security by design for all of your product lifecycle. That's the difficult portion. Most industry and even our industry, is it's about speed of delivery. First to market gets the larger portion of the market. But you have to tamper that. Okay. So in times of peace, prepare for war. So the war is actually how to withstand. One of them is how to withstand an attack. You have to be able to withstand it. Although we live in interesting times, as you can see, Japan, they have developed a fiber optic cable that can deliver 1 petabyte per second. Now, imagine yourself trying to protect yourself from a 1 petabyte DDoS attack. Okay, so it's a very interesting time. And then, of course, these are, if you look at the withstand, it's more on how to make it more difficult for your attacker, whether they were able to breach you, when they get information out. So these are all part of the how to withstand it. And of course, you have to have rapid incident response. Now, next is you have to adapt. Now, it's a cat and mouse game now. You will never see a single form of attack. Okay? A lot of the attackers will be using multiple attacks and multiple approaches, and you have to adapt to them. Okay? So, one of the most important things is you have to have scenario-based playbooks. What would happen? Okay, if there is a crisis, you don't want your entire team to run around like headless chickens. Okay, because this happens, what do? You have to be able to define all of those. And the most important, what we have experienced is, we always practice business continuity and crisis management. And that came into play, especially when the CrowdStrike issue came. And of course, recovery. Of course, the first thing they called, after the first incident of CrowdStrike blue screen, our IT security team called me up, said the blue screen. Oh, it's blue screen, okay. Get ready to restore. We have no choice. So they were able to block CrowdStrike, but at the same time, what do you do with the server? I said, if it's a blue screen, there's a high probability there's corrupt data there already. So they started already getting out the backups and trying to restore it immediately. But the important thing here we have to take into account is, it's not just about recovery. You need the work with your business teams. Why? Because even if you restore, there will always be inconsistency in data. Okay? So data integrity validation is part of it. You don't want to restore a faulty service after going down. Okay? People will be very critical to you. So actually, this is for those, for us as a practitioner. It's very expensive. Okay? So putting all of those in, like, what are the risks? So usually you always map it against some form of business outcome. If you don't train your people in phishing, people will open the link and then it will down your system. Compliance, okay. Compliance, of course, you have to state that it's non-negotiable. And actually, sometimes we do have a back and forth regarding minimum compliance. You know, minimum compliance is also a softer target if you're just at the minimum compliance. And then most people will wonder about cybersecurity, and they would say, is it worth it? Now, if you are confident in rolling out your product without fear that somebody will hack it, you will have an advantage. And right talent. Who else has no problem with talent? Resources and talent is something very hard to find today. So you have to maximize your investment. Recognize also if you don't have enough talent. You can use outsourcing, but also be careful with outsourcing because they also may not have the right talent So how do you become agile and effective to threats? It will always have a hole somewhere, someday in your defense. You have to have a assume breach mentality. How do you recover? What happens? How do you find out something's wrong inside? Now, you have to also make sure part of your um, incident response includes local laws, mandates that you need to follow. And then, of course, breach reporting, that's the usual problem. When you're in the middle of the incident, sometimes the things that you forget is to tell the regulators what's happening because you're so busy. And simulation and tabletop should be a regular exercise. Now, for us, we actually move from primary to DR for a week and then come back. So it's a very good practice because you know that your DR is able to accommodate the capacity that you need. I guess the battery went out. Meron man. Ayun. Okay, so you need certain actionable steps for resilience. First things you need to build, governance. Okay, you have to make sure all the things, your actions are actually working, and how do you make sure that everything is integrated for cyber risk? And then, of course, careful in using your resources. You have very limited resources, you have few people, and how do you deploy them? Okay, so next is you have to have proactive defenses and readiness. So this is the one thing I cannot highlight enough regarding supply chain. Okay, now I know everybody has a firewall and everything, all of those defense. Let's take into account how fast does somebody build a malware. Does anybody know how fast a malware? The record time is within 3 hours of a patch. What they will do is they will reverse engineer the patch, and then they will create the malware. Now, if your supply chain is not good, your supplier doesn't tell you, oh, here's the patch, then you are the first victim. Okay, so that's the one side of it. The other side is all those third parties that outsourcing that really makes our lives easier is also potentially the weak points where everybody will enter. Okay, and of course the firewall about people. Train your people, don't forget your people. So always test your incident response. One of the most important thing here is about crisis communication. If you have an incident, internal communication is one of the most hard to control. Okay, so most people may actually your own employees may actually spin rumors around. Okay, that one is hard. So when we had the experience of CrowdStrike, the communication was very tight, only in the group of the crisis communication and management group. Okay, it's not coordinated outside because people will spin their own story. What we can say is there's an IT issue, we're fixing it. And then, of course, ensure recoverability. Sometimes you don't recover it. You double check. Now, like for example, one of our admins said to me, oh, we have to back up the ADs nearly at the same time. Why? Because of the knowledge that they have to sync. So if you have one that's very old and too far, the drift is too far, the AD, when you restore it, will have a problem. Okay? So even that recovery strategy, you have to test it with a real, how would you call it, sandbox environment. So future threats, geopolitical risks, we've seen that. We were attacked several times by a particular country, but it's part of it, whether we provoke them or not. It's really part of that's life. AI is part of the tools of the adversary. You should also use it, or else you will be overwhelmed by them. And quantum encryption is about to be, quantum computing is about to become mainstream, 3 to 4 years, probably. Those specialized ones that will break all of your encryption is there. And of course, as highlighted by the previous speaker, there's a lot of regulatory change. For us, it's not as easy as that because you have to put in a lot of things and changes. For example, the AFASA law was created to protect the consumers. But if you look at the things you have to put in, it's huge. Okay, so that's why regulatory velocity is a problem. And then the last two, well, if you have IoT, everybody has IoT already. And decentralized finance, our central bank is looking at it already. And we've been part of the testing group. I guess this is done. Thank you.